Hello everyone, and welcome to the second part in my BTD Tier 5 ranking series. Yes. So yeah, again, wait, I didn't say this last video, frick. I have plans for this week and next week of tier lists, this week being BTD 6, and next week, you'll see next week. But after next week, I don't have many ideas for tier lists. I'm thinking of maybe doing a Gamma Kaiju tier list, but I don't know. If you guys could give me some ideas for some tier lists in the comments, that would be incredible. And with that out of the way, let's move on with the tier lists. Alright, we're starting off with Cripple Moab. Cripple Moab is in a very similar situation to Super Brittle and Gluestorm. However, I'd say to go with Gluestorm in B tier. Its design, it looks pretty, sorry. It's decent, it's very good in boss events for extra damage, and its stunning can be somewhat helpful, but yeah. I have never seen very many people use this thing in chimps unless they're going for that achievement where you have to put down all 3 sniper tier 5s in chimps. Don't ask me why that's an achievement, it just is one. But yeah. Sniper Monkey, he gets to go in B tier. Elite Sniper, good for farming, well, somewhat good for farming, and decently good for clearing rushes. However, not very used, he's decently cheap, so I'll put him in C tier. He's not incredibly used, but he's decently cheap and can deal some decent group balloon damage. Alright, after that, we have Elite Defender. Elite Defender isn't horrible, but it's not very good either. I remember using Elite Defender a lot when I was doing chimps on the easier maps. My main strategy was Elite Defender, Prince of Darkness, and Permaspike before Permaspike got its massive nerf. But yeah, nowadays that strategy is almost impossible. Elite Defender, I'm going to put him with Elite Sniper in C tier. Round the same cost, and Elite Defender is definitely better at single target damage than Elite Sniper is, but I'd say they're about the same. Alright, Energizer. Very useful late game for reducing ability cooldowns, but that's about the only reason anyone's ever placed this thing down. Boss events, it's somewhat useful for the same reason, and chimps, I don't really know of anyone who's getting an Energizer in chimps, I gotta say. So, I'll put him in the same tier as the other slightly less powerful boss balloon killers, or boss balloon support. Preemptive Strike, I gotta say, one of the most satisfying things in this game is watching Preemptive Strike just completely nuke round 95. Because of how annoyingly hard that round is, I suggest doing it in sandbox, watch a Preemptive Strike completely destroy round 95, it is very satisfying. Anyways, Preemptive Strike, I'd say he goes in C tier. Other than his, if you want damage to the bad with the first strike ability, just go for the tier 4. I've never seen anyone use the tier 5 for its ability. Its passive ability is the only reason you'd get it. Sub-Commander, this thing's going straight to A. It is one of the best chimp strats in the game. And I used it back when the Polyphemus bug was still active and one-shot chimps on an intermediate map, which was pretty cool. But yeah, Sub-Commander is... yeah, it's a very good strategy for beating chimps. Boss balloons, not so powerful, but the fact that it's so prevalent in chimps means I gotta give it some decent credit. Anyways, then we have Carrier Flagship. Now, Carrier Flagship is an interesting one. If this was before Pirate Lord became the Lord of all existence, I would say that he would be the best boat tier 5 for dealing damage. However, he doesn't make the money that Trade Empire does, and he also doesn't have the popping power that Pirate Lord does. So he's kind of just awkwardly sandwiched in the middle, and right now is the most mid boat tier 5. So I'm going to put him in C tier. He's still useful. Don't get me wrong, he's still useful. But currently, he's the worst boat tier 5. Pirate Lord, this thing's going to B tier. It's gotten a couple of nerfs in response to the massive buff it got recently, but it's still incredibly powerful and can solo up to round 80 with relative ease on most maps. Trade Empire is going straight to A. It is the best farming method in the game. I think it's been nerfed a lot recently, but I think it's still the best. And it's the best way of getting pops for the boat Paragon, which is the best Paragon in the game, so. Then again, like, boss events, like, for boss events it's decent for farming, but for chimps it's completely useless, so, you know what, I'll bump it down to B just because of how bad it is in chimps. Yeah, sorry, man. Anyways, Apache Prime. On single lane maps, this thing destroys chimps. Boss events, it isn't used very much, mainly because you can get better things for the money. But, yeah, on chimps it's pretty good, unless there's 2 lanes. Then it's horrible. Considering that it relies on a lot on what track you do chimps on, I'm going to put this dude in B. He's not horrible, but he's not incredible either. Special Poperations. This thing's pretty mid. He isn't horrible in chimps, and he isn't horrible in boss events. He was pretty useful in the Lich event that we had a little while ago, where ability cooldowns were reduced, and you can just spam his ability to get tons and tons of lives. But, yeah. That's about the only time I've ever used this thing. Alright, Comanche Commander. Very similar to Special Operations in that it's pretty mid. When it's mini Comanches could be buffed by an Alchemist, this thing would have been way higher. However, because its mini Comanches can no longer be buffed by an Alchemist, it's dropped a fair bit. Alright, next up we have Sky Shredder. This thing's going straight to A tier for the same reasons as Inferno Ring. It's incredible in chimps, and can do some decent damage to the bosses. I don't know. Yeah, well, less Inferno Ring and more Sub-Commander, I suppose. Really good for chimps, and meh in boss events. Alright, Sarbomba. Sarbomba is pretty mid, not gonna lie. It doesn't have, like, you have to stall strat for it to be useful. Like, you gotta stall it out, wait, and then use the ability to nuke everything on screen. It can be useful, don't get me wrong. It does have a couple of strats rolled around with it, but it's not incredible. Flying Fortress, on the other hand, is incredibly good. The only thing holding Flying Fortress back is its cost. If it cost less, you would be able to, if you get Flying Fortress, it solos up to round 100 with ease, as long as it has camo detection. Especially with the top path. If you get a village in the top path, this thing completely destroys everything up to round 100. Its cost prevents you from getting it to like the mid-90s, but once you get it, you're good. And boss events, it's also decent. So yeah, B tier works for it. It's not incredible in either, but it's pretty decent in both. Alright, the biggest one. Before the Balloon Solver's buff, I would say that this would be the best Super Ceramic counter in the game. But now it's just completely outclassed by Balloon Solver. Not only is Balloon Solver a good 15k cheaper than it, at least, probably closer to 20k, counting the tier 3s, 4s, and etc. It's just not as good. Yes, it does more Moab damage than Balloon Solver does, more reliably, but for that much more, it's not worth it compared to Balloon Solver. Don't worry about that. Anyways, Pompano. Pompano suffers from the same thing that Sarbomba does. I have never seen anyone use it outside of a very niche strategy. And even then, it's used less than Sarbomba is, because its ability is worse. Alright, Blue Incineration. Decent in chimps for defortifying things, and that's about the only time I've ever seen it used. yeah. The other two mortars, really, I don't have much to say for them. And now we get to my second favorite tower, the Dartling Gunner. Ray of Doom is very similar to Flying Fortress in that it's very expensive, but incredibly powerful. And if the map has a straight line, that straight line will not have any balloons on it until the mid, 110s. So yeah, Ray of Doom, very powerful, but that's about it, I gotta say. It's very expensive, but it's very powerful. So it's very similar to Flying Fortress in that regard. MAD, A tier. It is the most reliable method of killing tier 2 elite bosses in the game. And it can even be helpful in later tiers. Chimps, it isn't incredibly useful. It can deal some incredible Moab damage, but that's about it. Balloon Exclusion Zone is definitely the most mid out of the Dartling Gunners. Especially because for the cost of Balloon Exclusion Zone, you can get MAD and do a lot more damage. But it's still pretty decent. Certainly better than all the ones down in D tier and F tier. Alright, and that is the tier list so far. Alright, next video, we're going to be ranking the Magic Monkeys.